Exclusive interview by Romany Bain, Robert Plant, or Plant, depending where you're from. Okay, this is from She magazine, which is a British magazine, and it's from June 1970. Here we go. It was quite obvious from the moment we met that he was much more relaxed than I was. As he walked into the cramped little office, I took in his snake-skin shoes, skin-tight jeans, t-shirt and strawberry velvet jacket, topped by that lustrous blonde head of wavy shoulder-length, strup-well-petter hair, and my spirit failed me. But the little face which peeped giraffe-like through the curtain was gentle and humorous. "Nice to meet you," he said, holding out his hand. "Do you fancy a cup of tea?" Tea or double brandy would have been equally welcome at that moment. As we went down in the lift, I explained that I wouldn't be asking him too much about the type of music his group played, as I'd rather know more about him. "I'm glad," he answered, surprisingly, in his pleasant, slightly brum voice, as we strolled along Oxford Street. Reporters on some papers get so excited with the music that they never get down to a serious conversation about us as people. Then when it comes to an assessment of a person, it gets blown up, and if you're not careful, you start trying to live up to it. You can easily pretend to be something you're not. That's why I only come to London when I have to, once a month. I just don't want to get involved in that kind of thing. I began to warm to him. "We must make an odd couple," he said amicably as we walked into Lyon's Corner House. That, for those that don't know, was a type of tea house that was all over London, Lyon's Corner tea houses. "With any luck, they'll think I'm your mother," I replied, and we both laughed. By the time he returned with a tray and 2 cups, 20 fags and a box of matches, I had decided that Robert Plant, lead singer with Led Zeppelin, was going to be quite an experience. After all, I didn't have a cup of char with a chap looking like the Archangel Gabriel every day of the week. At first I wasn't sure whether his dislike of London and the pop scene was a take-on. "No, it's true," he said. "I just revel in country things. Chickens and goats and my little farm. I've had it for 6 months. It's a Georgian farmhouse with 3 acres, and I'm there all the time when I'm not working. I've only 3 goats and 12 chickens at the moment, but I have to get up in the morning and feed them, so the day begins much earlier. It's really nice to have things dependent on you. A relationship with animals is so real somehow. It's all too easy to get carried away with being in a pop group, but by being down to earth you can keep yourself together. You don't lose your identity. You're in charge of whatever you do. Some people just go off the rails with so much money and no roots, so I've got mine deeply set. I just seem to be able to imagine so many more things in the country. My house was empty for a year and has a terrific atmosphere. There are Stone Age tools in the garden, and a cave, and I am so intrigued with the mixture of romance and reality. Anything with a bit of romance interests me. I read a lot down there. I've been investigating the stories about the continent of Mu, which existed in the Pacific 15,000 years ago. The tiny islands split up and are covered with archaeological remains, and their culture spread through India and Burma and reached Mexico. I've just finished Hammond Innes's The Conquistadors, which is an incredible book about Cortez and all these Spaniards who found priests with hair to their feet, and cannibalism, chopping up and taking hearts out and such like. And then relating this to what I read about Mu, it's only a great big theory at the moment, but I get intrigued with things like this where there is a little bit of doubt. I read Tolkien too, and after that I just had to own a place in the country myself. I dragged my mind away from the enchanting picture of this Arthurian knight feeding his chickens and asked him about his other, more famous life with the group. "Why Led Zeppelin?" I asked. "I didn't know before, but it refers to a joke which falls flat," he explained. The title had to be chosen by Keith Moon, drummer with The Who. He's a complete lunatic. Now, it's got quite a satirical flavour because, of course, it didn't fall flat at all. It did very well. Though, in fact, a lady who is, I think, either the sister or wife of the original Von Zeppelin got a bit angry about it. She dashed into some studios where we were recording abroad and wanted us thrown out. She wasn't going to have babbling apes making so much money from her family name, she said. I can't see it's anything to do with her. "You might have chosen to be Led Windsor," I suggested. "I like that," he laughed loudly, and the elderly ladies at the next table looked even more disapproving. "Did you know each other before?" I asked. "I had a group in Birmingham called Band of Joy. John Bonham, our drummer, was with me. When it folded, I joined Alexis Corner, a very great friend of mine. Then the singer left the Yardbirds, and I was asked to take his place. I came on one of my rare visits to London, leaving my horse at Hendon, and Jimmy Page, the guitarist with the Yardbirds, and I got together. We asked John Paul Jones, who was arranging for Donovan and Herman, to come in with us, and the only drummer I could imagine working with us was John Bonham, so he came in too. It just worked. We've got a good formula going for us at the moment. We like each other, and this helps. So many groups are formed now just on musical prowess, and within weeks everyone is trying to blow everyone else off the stage. The antagonism gets too much, and they have to forget it. It's very confusing for the fans who see all their favourite musicians together. Then suddenly, bang! Talented people are often hard to get on with. I had read that the group had a powerful astrological force working for it, and asked him if he believed it. "Oh yes," he said with conviction. "You see, being the singer, without sounding conceited, I'm the leader really, and I happen to be Leo, August 20th, 1948. I've gone into it pretty extensively, and I seem to have all the properties of a Leo. If you are a good one, you are level-headed and rather self-righteous. Bad ones are conceited. I think Leos are usually good-natured. I think you should study your own character and astral characteristics, and then you know what to be wary of, not to get big-headed, for instance." The others seem fit too. Jimmy Page is a Capricorn. He's a bit stubborn, but quietly so, and a bit self-conscious and can be nervous. I'm very allied to him musically. John Paul Jones is another Capricorn, again quiet, but he never stops thinking, always at work for the good. Then John Bonham is a Gemini, but he's vivacious, always ready for a loon and raving about. I couldn't be like that. There's no fun in spending money and living it up drinking champagne all the time. Then there's nothing to live on. You burn yourself out. But he's a good ingredient for the rest of us. He's the raver, and we sit down and do the thinking. Before I met him, I was surprised to hear that he was married, but it didn't seem so strange after talking to him. I met my wife 4 years ago at a Georgie Fame concert. I didn't like what I'd heard of his singing, so I went to see him, but he didn't turn up. So I still don't like him. I met my wife instead, so I hate him even more. He roared with laughter again. No, seriously, I think marriage for me was the make or break of being a stable person, or just going on out-and-out looning. In the pop world where everything gets blown up and unreal, you never know what is going to happen. You are going to have children here, there and everywhere if you lead that sort of life, and you've got to expect the consequences. So being married, though I don't usually admit it, is part of the peace of mind and stability thing I hope I've found. We've got a little daughter too, called Carmen Jane. My wife Maureen is Anglo-Indian, you see, and has Spanish blood in her and is very attractive and dark, so I was sure my daughter would be dark-eyed. She turned out like me, blonde-haired and blue-eyed, so we added Jane for luck. "About your hair," I asked. "How long have you worn it this length?" 3 years, he said, fingering a couple of tendrils. "It's not in the best condition at the moment. It's hard to keep it together. I wash it myself 3 times a week and dry it in front of the fire at home." His hair has always caused him a few problems. "My father is a civil engineer, and I went to grammar school near Birmingham. It was decided that I was intelligent, but wouldn't concentrate. At 13 and a half, I liked girls all of a sudden, and it was all down to attracting them the best way I could. I grew my hair, it flopped over my ears, and was immediately chopped off. So for the next few years, I forgot about lessons and kept joining pop groups. The first time I was sacked because I couldn't sing. By the time I was 15, I was singing in numerous road clubs. I was supposed to start training as a chartered accountant, but at 15, which was young really, I suddenly decided where I was going. I packed up training after a couple of weeks, went back to college to get some more O-levels, and at 16 left home. It was getting to the stage where I only dared go home at night, my hair was so long. Then I started my real education, musically, moving from group to group, furthering my knowledge of the blues and music which was worth listening to and had weight. This finally led to my working with Alexis Corner, and had I not been married, I might have stayed with him and just gone on singing the blues. I enjoy records of the country blues era. It sounds a bit sick, but they weren't the churned-out rubbish which they call blues nowadays. They are RCA Jazz Collector's items, and I am proud of them. After 6 years of obscurity, Led Zeppelin arrived in the nick of time. My hope was fading. I was a local name, then all of a sudden, bang! He laughed again. It seems funny that a few months ago I was an underground singer, and now they are calling me the new sex symbol. Can't be bad. "Are you aware of your audience when you sing?" I asked. Without them throwing back vibrations, I couldn't do it. I couldn't extend myself. When I'm on stage and there's this visual thing, it just seems to pour out of me. And by being free and open, you get a new dimension going, and the audience comes back to us. I put a lot of the group's success down to this. We aren't content to just go on stage and play like clockwork, the allotted time, then go off. That's not it at all. And the audience reacts so. The reception both here and in the States has been incredible. They dance in the aisles and all that. When it happened to Bill Haley, he got a lot of national publicity, but we didn't, he said wryly. "Well, I'd better be catching my commuter train back to reality," he smiled. "Have you any ambitions?" I asked as we were leaving. "My only ambition is to make everyone round me as happy and to have as much peace of mind as I have. To make them aware of how much depends on us for the future. They say the long-haired people won't know how to rule the country, but they can't make a worse job than how it's been so far. Our fate is in the hands of people who won't grasp the situation until it's too late. Politicians ignore what's under their noses. They ignore the greed and corruption. It's very frightening. Everyone wants peace and love, but they seem to be things you can only hope for and never achieve. Mankind is so self-centered. It's every man for himself. There's nobody who can make them sit down and listen. Everyone goes their own way, and the next war will come, and that's it. I'm a defeatist, I suppose. I don't want to be. But there's nowhere to begin, no stepping stone to start afresh from. Somehow everyone has got to see that they have to begin all over again if there is to be any hope for us. It sounds so simple, just for every person to think a bit more about the person next to them, but it will probably never happen. There'll be another war, and that will be it." We walked back along Oxford Street. The dollies giggled and wiggled their behinds. A couple of navvies whistled, and the middle-aged shoppers nudged each other, and it wasn't hard to guess their reactions. Long-haired, out-of-work layabout without a thought in his head. But I knew better. And after the interview, there's a little bit in bold. All set to skyrocket to even greater heights in the 70s, Led Zeppelin sold over 5 million albums here and abroad last year, earning valuable dollars, pesetas, francs and yens for the export drive. A grateful country, in the shape of Miss Gwyneth Dunwoody, Parliamentary Secretary to the Board of Trade, presented each of the group and their manager Peter Grant with 2 gold discs and 1 platinum. Golds were for their smash albums Led Zeppelin and Led Zeppelin 2, while the platinum was simply for the latter platter, Led Zeppelin 2.